Hey, everybody, Off the Mic Sports Network here, another edition of Off the Top Rope. So, an interesting night for women's wrestling with Battleground for WWE taking place. A couple really solid matches over there for the Women's North American Championship. You had Sol Ruka and Kalani Jordan in a really great match for two relatively inexperienced wrestlers. And then you obviously had the two experienced wrestlers for the NXT Women's Championship in Stephanie Vaquer and Jordan Grace having an outstanding match. Stephanie, you guys know how I feel about Stephanie. I think from a look perspective, she's beautiful, and obviously she's just an incredible wrestler. So like, it's just like, it's some of those outcomes may have been predictable, but the women's division is tip top in WWE, and they're doing Evolution literally the day after, AEW All in Texas, which some people are trying to convince themselves that, Toni Storm and Mercedes Mone, because Mercedes Mone won the women's Owen Hart Cup tournament over Jamie Hayter. I hated the finish. Great match. Toni Storm, predictable win over Mina Shirakawa, which I don't think it does anything for Mina, even though Mina actually pinned Toni to get that shot. Okay. But you saw on Sunday night the drastically different approaches from both of these companies when it comes to their women. And you can say, yeah, Mercedes and Jamie got a ton of time, and maybe the time that the two women's matches on the WWE and the NXT side weren't as long, but from a women's perspective, they did a lot more to make you feel like, hey, these women are in a really good spot. Yes, there were clean finishes here, but I don't think Jordan or Kalani are going to lose any ounce of credibility with that. Jamie Hayter was immediately tossed aside. Complete afterthought in the post-match celebration. You saw the complete, and I understand Mercedes is a heel, and it's a little bit of a different dynamic. But we moved on way too quickly from Jamie losing in the manner that she did with a roll-up finish that was kind of botched. And then, obviously you had the whole lesbian kiss thing at the end, which was, the whole thing with Mina and Toni Storm. And everybody was expecting Mariah May to show up. I told you guys months ago that wasn't happening. Mariah May's leaving. She's going to WWE. And that says a lot more. Hey, she recognizes, hey, my ceiling has been hit here in AEW because I know where this is going. This is Toni and Mercedes division. And if you're not one of those two women, you're gonna fall to the bottom of the pack. Like, you've already seen it. Megan Bain showed up there. She didn't even get on the main card of the show. She was in a women's championship match at the last pay-per-view. Mina Shirakawa is going to probably be on Collision or Dynamite fighting for something else, and in some intermediate or some sort of random ass storyline and doing nothing. The drastically different approaches of these two women's divisions is stark. And you guys can say, hey, Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné could potentially main event a pay-per-view. Could, with a proper build. What's the build here? There's no build. There's nothing. There's no build to this whatsoever. And let's be real. It's not main eventing over Jon Moxley and Hangman Adam Page. That's not happening. It's not happening. You can have your wishful thinking about that. It's not main eventing All in Texas. That's not happening. And if you think just because Evolution's happening the next day that they're going to change that, no. Because that's not going to change anybody's perception of how this women's division is perceived. Because here's my problem. And I've been saying this for weeks and months when I knew that this was a strong possibility that they go in this direction. Look at what's happened when it comes to, since, Toni Storm came back, won the women's championship, beat Mariah May. Think about what has happened. And think about what has happened with Mercedes Moné with that TBS title since the start of the year. Just had a random title match against a CML woman who I've never heard of, who I could look up and seems like she's pretty solid, but hey, that was kind of a thrown together match for no reason. Billy Starks, doesn't even have the match that we all expected her to have with Athena. Also, Athena being tossed aside, I don't like that. That's why, when people were getting mad at me for saying, man, why do you hate the finish? Jamie will be able to come back from this. I was like, no, she won't. Do you see how the post match, that gives me no optimism that we're even going to reference Jamie Hayter moving forward. And listen, all this is setting up for me is, if Willow Nightingale's not the one to conquer Mercedes, I don't know what the hell we're doing here. Willow just signed up for an extended period of time. Willow's got to be the next one in this division. Otherwise, like you have nobody else. Megan Bain's fallen by the wayside. Camille, I don't even know where the fuck she is. Penelope Ford. I mean, Anna Jay's getting her butt kissed in the middle. Is getting people's faces rammed into her butt because she's got a fat ass. I guess that's her characteristic. I like Anna Jay, but okay, cool. Hey, you see the differences in the approaches to these women's divisions, and you think back to where when Vince McMahon like women's wrestling was not a thing. And you look at WWE's women's division from NXT, they're going to do a second evolution show. Granted, it took them 7 years to do it, but they've got a freaking phenomenal women's division. Stephanie Vaquer was literally on the other show a year ago, is now one of the most popular females in this company. Rhea Ripley is outstanding. It's not about the four horsewomen anymore. Becky Lynch is trying to get one of her students really in Lyra Valkyria over. Yeah, the women's United States Championship picture is kind of a mess because Zelina Vega's trying, Chelsea Green's kind of gotten screwed over. But hey, you know what? At least there's talented women being showcased. Liv Morgan had a great year. I mean, Raquel Rodriguez, say what you will about her. Raquel's in a prominent spot. Like there are women in that division, despite how the internet talks about them, that are consistently in the picture and are not being buried and tossed aside basically for the benefit of doing this one match in All in Texas. That's my problem with what happened here. That's my problem with what happened. And if you compare and contrast between the two women's matches that happened at Battleground and the two women's matches that happened on Double or Nothing, you just look at how they are. Like we're not like as much as people like Mina and as much people like Jamie, they're getting tossed aside. We're doing one women's match at this show, at least as of now, because I don't know what the direction is or how you're going to build any other matches when the TBS champion is fighting the women's world champion at the pay-per-view. It just doesn't do anything for me. And they didn't need to go this route. I get it from a business perspective. And I think, honest to God, I have a theory that I'm going to talk about in another video of why I think that they went with this match. But Evolution could have played a role into it, but there's some other stuff really behind the scenes that I think they're not going to acknowledge potentially. Throw your one up. Yeah, this it's just like I said, there's just you see the potential and you see like these women standing out because hey, they've got room to grow. But you've got these other talented like Jamie Hayter before this tournament was not doing diddly dick, man. She was not doing anything. She had about a 2-week build. We know how great she is, but she wasn't presented in a way that made you think that she was going to beat Mercedes Moné. And some people thought that was going to happen. I was like, what are you kidding me? I love Jamie, but there's no way they believe that this is going to happen. So they've run roughshod over the AEW's women's division, as far as I'm concerned, is dead. The WWE women's division is thriving. Everybody thought that this was built around Charlotte and it was built around, Becky Lynch. Look at what's happened with those two at back-to-back pay-per-views. They lost. Charlotte is not going to be in Money in the Bank. Becky Lynch isn't going to be in the Money in the Bank. That women's match, Julia is showing up and she's on the main roster. Roxanne Perez is on the main roster. She's in the Money in the Bank match. Everybody gets mad about Rhea Ripley, but have you seen the reactions Rhea Ripley gets? She's one of the most popular people, male or female, in that company. Liv Morgan's incredibly popular. Like, it's not just about the four horsewomen anymore. They've evolved their division, whereas AEW, with all the talented women that they had in that division, Athena, Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale, none of those women who could have easily had a spot in this tournament are going to be challenging for the Women's World Championship. It's the TBS champion. That's my issue with this whole thing. I understand how big of a star and all the bravado and all the mystique and what Mercedes came with when she was Sasha Banks and she came over. I get that. I get how great Toni Storm has been for this company. But when you see that women's division just falling by the wayside, and then you see the women's matches that have happened on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, specifically in NXT, on this Battleground show, you just see the drastic differences in these two women's divisions. It is so stark, it's insane. And I hope it gets corrected at some point because I just have no reason to believe that Tony Khan gives any shred of a shit about the women, except if they have a flashy name and a flashy title to them. Because why is Mercedes Moné winning this tournament? Why was she in this tournament? You had an easy storyline to build with her and Athena. You threw the match away in the second round of this tournament, not even the final. And Athena is wondering what the fuck's going on. It's just it really pissed me off. And I mean, they were lucky that they kind of corrected things with the men, but the women's division in AEW is a fucking disaster. They may have one match on this show. They may figure out another way to put another match on the show. Maybe they do some women's tag team titles or something like that. Maybe. Still, none of these women feel even remotely close to these other two, to Toni and Mercedes at the top of this division, and that's a problem. And maybe they heat up Willow Nightingale to the point where she can feel like something significant. Because to me, as far as I'm concerned, she's really the only person that makes any sense. Because I think Mercedes is going to win the women's championship at All In, and then it's going to set up for Willow to potentially win either the TBS or the world championship off of her. That's, to me, what's going to happen at this point. If that doesn't happen, I don't know what the fuck we're doing. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.